Property damage, the estimate is, may be extensive. My own apartment, says Anna van Lemern, was in disarray, and many buildings along my walk home had been damaged and cracked. One office tower lost part of its facade. No one was injured.
Well, some extraordinary accounts coming into us here. Let's speak now to Jeffrey Balanag, who joins us on the line from Higashi Shimbashi in Tokyo. Jeffrey, just tell us what your situation is.
Well, it is just another normal day. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, then we felt a slight shaking in the building. The building we're in is designed to shake, as most buildings here in Tokyo. And it seemed like it was a repeat of the earthquake last Thursday, but this one was really, really long. And unlike previous earthquake, the ground was rolling. It's like, you know, when you're on a boat and you start getting seasick. That's the kind of motion that the building had. It wasn't shaking from side to side. So it was really creepy. I'm from the Philippines, and we had a very big earthquake like this before, and it was really, really bad. The ground was rolling and shaking, and this earthquake reminded me of that and made me very scared.
Right. Obviously, you've got dual concerns here for yourself, and of course, possibly for people back home, because the Philippines is within the orbit of the tsunami warning as well. But what did you do at the point at which you realised that this was not just another quake?
Well, after doing the usual emergency drills, putting on our helmets, opening the doors, making sure people had their equipment on, I started hitting the email. I knew that the government would restrict the use of cell phones for use by emergency services, so I started sending email and calling landlines and finding my sister and my niece, who are hopefully on their way home through the gridlock of the city. Trains have stopped, traffic is all gridlocked. And hey, Facebook saves the world. I'm in touch with my friends back home in Facebook, and we're exchanging messages on how things are going on.
Yeah, well, it's good to know that you can do that so promptly, isn't it? And you are where now? You're hunkered down somewhere, are you?
Yeah, I'm in the office. Need to stay here, monitor. I work in IT, monitor the systems, and keep in touch. Here there's electricity, we have water, communications. A lot of the homes here don't have electricity and water, so staying put is, I think, the better thing to do.
Okay, Jeffrey Balanag, thanks very much indeed for talking to us.
Well, let's return now to Japan and specifically to Tokyo. Our correspondent Roland Burke, who's been speaking to us throughout the morning. And Roland, perhaps we can start with these revised figures that we seem to be getting, suggesting that the death toll has now reached 19. Is that what you're hearing? Okay, apologies, obviously some sound problems there, trying to connect with Roland in Tokyo. Let's just bring in these latest pictures for you that just give you a sense of this whirlpool that's been created there. I don't know if we can bring in Humphrey on this one. Is that usual? That because we've seen a wave moving forward essentially, but that very much a spinning whirlpool-like motion.
Yes, I mean, without knowing the details of that, it's obviously hit something or some other force of current that has created it. And again, what we're seeing time and again with these pictures is the sheer force of how what looks like a placid Pacific Ocean, almost out of a tourist brochure, going along, and it is incredible force. Then it hits the land, and it goes from seawater to sludge, and we saw it in the earlier pictures there, picking up houses, picking up trucks, picking up ships, and simply flinging them around as if they were toys. And here I think what you've got is some dreadful whirlpool that is a vortex that's sucking everything that it meets into itself. I'm not sure what that is there, if that is a building or something, or a ship or something on the edge of that. But what we're seeing here, these are the pictures that we didn't see in 2004, 2005. These are the pictures that in Indonesia, the Philippines, the tiny island of Tuvalu in the middle of the Pacific that is threatened anyway through global warming, and now the Red Cross is warning that the waves of this tsunami, as it goes over that island, could be higher than the island itself. So you've got lots of people in these the Marshall Islands, Tuvalu, Vanuatu, these places that we hardly hear about or know about. Only a few 100,000 people, a few million in them, but the Red Cross is now warning that these waves could gather to such a height that they could literally sweep over those islands.
Okay, Humphrey, thank you very much for shedding some light on that. That whirlpool, actually, we were hearing was indeed off the eastern coast, as you'd expect, probably in the line exactly from where the epicentre was. Let's return to Roland Burke, who we were speaking to a short while ago. He's in Tokyo for us. And Roland, I was just asking you about the latest casualty figures as you were hearing them.
We're hearing 6 confirmed dead at the moment, but it is very early stages. I can tell you that whirlpool was off the coast of Ibaraki, which is on Japan's Pacific coast to the north of Tokyo, so something that was caused by the tsunami. Here in Tokyo, we're seeing lots of people trying to walk home. Public transport has been suspended. It is now dark here. It's early evening. So people, many of whom have spent much of the afternoon down in the streets, in the city squares, outside their offices, feeling a whole series of aftershocks that we felt too. They are now trying to think about how to get home. And the Prime Minister of Japan has said that he's set up an emergency response team within the government that he's leading, and he's asked the people of Japan to remain cautious and vigilant and calm.
And just in terms of that suspension of public transport, is that a power issue or is that just a precautionary issue because of aftershocks and so on?
It's a precautionary issue. Some of the mobile phone networks are down, but the power is still on in Tokyo. It didn't seem to go out here in the city. The expressways, Tokyo is crisscrossed by expressways that are up pretty high. They're up on flyovers about sort of 5 or 6 stories high. Those have been closed as well, so there's pretty much gridlock in terms of the traffic. And inside office buildings, many of which are dozens and dozens of stories high, there are lots of skyscrapers in this city. All the elevators, the lifts have been shut off as well, so people have had to walk down from their offices.
And Roland, a lot of people we've been speaking to giving their sensation essentially of an earthquake and describing it really like the motion of a ship.
Already unstable, but now teetering on what looks like a meltdown. After the quake and the tsunami, a blast at the Daiichi nuclear power plant in Fukushima. Its sheer power plain to see. Reports that the roof of one of the reactors had caved in offered a worrying sign that the containment building may have been breached. This picture was taken directly after the explosion. It shows 4 reactors. The one on the furthest left, circled in yellow, no longer has its outer structure. Several workers were reportedly injured in the blast. Engineers at the plant about 240 kilometers north of the Japanese capital Tokyo have been furiously trying to cool the reactor to reduce pressure in its metallic core. In normal conditions, the core of the reactor is kept cool by pushing water or coolant through to the top of the reactor as it produces power. During an emergency, control rods are inserted into the core to stop electricity production. The core remains very hot, but the water or coolant keeps it under control. But the earthquake wasn't the end of it. The ensuing tsunami destroyed the electrical grid and diesel generators that would normally keep the water moving. Batteries are then the last resort to run the pumps, and they only have a lifespan of 8 hours. Once the batteries fail, one option is to relieve the pressure inside the boiling reactor by a controlled release of steam. The ultimate task will be to prevent the further leakage of radioactive material. But as the evacuation radius in Fukushima keeps extending, there are fears that it may already be too late.
Within 10 minutes of losing the cooling, the fuel was doomed. And then it followed a cycle, which we know at 3 Mile Island was occurring. 3 Mile Island stopped because the containment dome didn't fail. This one, it seems as though the containment zone's out. So now it moves on into another area, another level of magnitude, where the radioactivity is available for release. Some of it has been probably violently ejected into the atmosphere and is now being carried by wind and weather somewhere else. So it's happening at the moment.
And as the mammoth relief operation continues to victims all across the country, the race is on to prevent a nuclear meltdown in the middle of a horrifying natural disaster. Sonia Gallego, Al Jazeera.
It was a failed experiment that led to history's biggest nuclear disaster. In April 1986, the Chernobyl reactor exploded as a result of the wrong individuals being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Quarter of a century on, history seems to be repeating in Japan. Despite the authorities' claims there of having the situation under control, the Fukushima nuclear power plant has already seen explosions, and that's despite advanced safety systems, which the Chernobyl reactor never had. That such a situation is unfolding in one of the world's most technologically advanced countries has heightened the sense of alarm internationally. But some experts say one should look into how the Japanese have been dealing with nuclear physics to get clues as to their continuing difficulties in dealing with a disaster.
So the technology is decades old. The society, the government, the regulators believe that the technology can be operated safely, but there's a built-in psychological complacency that if you're operating something that's so inherently dangerous, when you go to work every day, do you keep thinking about how dangerous that technology is? That would be, over time, rather damaging psychologically. So in other words, they convince themselves that they've mastered this technology. And unfortunately, with nuclear power, there's no second chance.
The Japanese nuclear drama is certainly not the first case of man's over-reliance on technology. It can be a dangerous friend, and when mishandled, can strike in disastrous fashion.
We have always seen this with these, what they call technogenic disasters. You remember last year there was that massive oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. Again, you had a very competent, famous company that seemed to know what it was doing, but they simply hadn't planned for conjuncture of conditions that would create the disaster. So this is the human condition. We simply aren't able, it seems, to handle these technologies. We're probably not ready for them.
The nightmare that the Chernobyl reactor became was eventually sealed off within a massive concrete tomb called the sarcophagus. The catastrophe provided valuable lessons in how to deal with a reactor disaster, but also stern warnings about the dangers of nuclear energy. What new lessons will be learned and what implications they will have for nuclear technology, the world nervously waits to see. Alexei.